always do this thing where you manage to get all girls to hate us. I think I've come up with something. That looks good. That looks really good. Welcome to Facebook. Hey, girls. Hey. Hello. $1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool? $1 billion. You mean Facebook? Yeah, groupies. This is our time. The social network.
And welcome to Time About the Movies. As we begin the month of October and essentially the fall movie season, we're taking a look at the 3 films released on October 1st, 2010. And of course, the biggest new release of the weekend is, of course, The Social Network. On a fall night in 2003, Harvard undergrad and computer programming expert Mark Zuckerberg, played by Jesse Eisenberg, sits down at his computer and begins working on a new idea. In a fury of blogging and programming, what begins in his dorm room soon becomes a global social network and a revolution in communication. A mere 6 years and 500 million friends later, Mark Zuckerberg is the youngest billionaire in history, but for this entrepreneur, success leads to both personal and legal complications. And there's no really need to sugarcoat it. This movie's freaking incredible. I've talked about the sequel they're doing now on Reviewing Network Live, and yeah, I don't think it's a necessary sequel, but I'd be interested to see what happens to the 15 years since this movie came out, but the movie overall is really good, and it works because everybody is casted in this so well. Jesse Eisenberg is pitch perfect as Mark Zuckerberg, and I felt like he should have been the one that should have gotten an Oscar for this, and not Colin Firth, but that's a whole other thing altogether when we get to the King's Speech. But Justin Timberlake's pretty good, too. Was it me, or did it remind me a lot of watching Neil Patrick Harris on How I Met Your Mother? Like, he kind of had that Barney Stinson type of vibe to him. I thought at first it was Neil Patrick Harris, but no, I realized that it was Justin Timberlake. And, hey, guy's got some acting chops in here, and he actually is doing more in this than he did in something like a Southland Tales or The Love Guru. But Andrew Garfield, who got casted as Spider-Man because of this, and you can see why. He's great as Eduardo. Second big movie for him this fall after Never Let Me Go. Rooney Mara, you can see why she got picked for the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake because she worked so well, and got to work with David Fincher again. Brenda Song, a lot of people know her from her Disney Channel years. She was pretty good for the brief bit she was in. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but I think the strongest of the supporting cast overall was Rashida Jones, who I thought was going to be misused, but she is put really good here playing Mark's lawyer, and the last scene with her and Eisenberg is brilliantly done. Of course, Armie Hammer's really good as the Winklevoss twins in a dual role, and shows the potential that he had as an actor. Everybody in here played their parts very well. Sorkin, I think, did a great job with the script. It won him the Oscar, and he's still one of our great writers out there. And David Fincher, you know, coming off of The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, as well as Seven and Fight Club, the guy has really missed, and this is a film where he just knocks it out of the park once again. If there's one problem I have with it, it's a nitpicky thing. It got a little too dark sometimes, and I'm not talking about the film's subject matter. I'm talking about the film itself. The movie just felt like it was way too dark, that you could barely see anything in the nighttime scenes, and it's just, you know, I had a problem with that with Benjamin Button, too. Parts of that were a little bit too dark for their own good, but it didn't stop my overall enjoyment of the film, much like happened in this, is with this film. It's a great movie. The Social Network definitely is one of the year's best films. It shows that David Fincher is on a hot streak right now, and yeah, excellent film. So, with all that said, let's get to the other 2 movies that had the balls to go up against The Social Network, since that was the big movie everyone was talking about. And that is, of course, Renee Zellweger and Bradley Cooper starring in Case 39.
About the night it happened. Not safe, Randy. If you try to protect me, they'll hurt you. Something came through that door. You've seen this before?
I know your worst fear, and they become it. Everybody has fears. Everybody's scared of something.
No one believes me until it happens to them. It's not real!
Case 39, rated R.
So her big fear was having somebody going after her that looks like the faces that Stan and Kyle made when they were in front of the dialysis building. That's literally what I thought of when I first saw that. It's just like, wow, that's not scary whatsoever. And then again, that sums up the movie in general. Not scary whatsoever. And it revolves around a social worker who attempts to protect a little girl from her violent parents and finds that things are more dangerous than she had expected. You have Renee Zellweger, Bradley Cooper, Jodelle Ferlin playing the young girl. Also, Ian McShane is in the movie in general. And yeah, this is a movie that is very much style over substance. This is a film that is pretty cool looking to look at overall, but that's about it in general. But then again, you wouldn't expect anything less from the director of Pandorum, which we all know how great of a movie that was. No, it wasn't, but I don't know, man. Like, you expect so much more, especially with the people involved in it. But then again, keep in mind, this was a film that was shooting all the way back in 2006. This has been sitting on a shelf at Paramount for 4 years. What more do I gotta say? That's pretty much all you gotta say about this one. It's not good. So, let's go ahead and end the show on a much more positive note, because really, that's all you can say about Case 39, was just that. Here's the remake to Let the Right One In, and that is Let Me In.
Ancient force found the body has survived for 200 years. Was killed by living.
Are you a vampire?
As a child.
I need blood to live.
You okay? From the director of Cloverfield.
Do you think there's such a thing as evil?
How do you protect a bond when you were cursed to destroy? Let Me In, rated R, starts October 1st. Let me in! Let me in!
You knew I had to throw in the Eric Andre clip. I mean, come on. The title is literally Let Me In. Let Me In! Okay. Let Me In. This is, of course, the remake of Let the Right One In, and it stars it features a bully 12-year-old boy played by Cody Smith-McPhee, who, of course, would later go on to star in Year of the Dog and get nominated for an Oscar for that, who befriends and develops a romantic relationship with a child vampire girl played by Chloe Grace Moretz in Los Alamos, New Mexico, during the 1980s. And this is directed and written by Matt Reeves, who gave us Cloverfield. But more importantly, this is the end of a pretty good breakout year for Chloe Moretz. I mean, she had a really strong year where, you know, she basically took off at this point. I mean, Kick-Ass, hey, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, she was one of the few things that was great about that movie. And then you have this film, a movie that is actually one of the better horror remakes out there, because they have a director in Matt Reeves who knows what he's doing. He knows that he doesn't have to make a simple, straightforward adaptation of the original film, and he does a very good job of keeping the plot similar to the original, yet making it more acceptable for a bigger audience. And it really was a very good, solid film, and a film that just works on so many levels. You also have Elias Koteas and also Richard Jenkins in here, and the casting overall is great here. And it helps that you have Hammer Films, which, you know, Hammer Films are usually a company where, I mean, they're known for making fun horror movies in general, and they did a pretty good job of not taking this to an extreme level, not taking this out of the norm of what you expect from a remake of Let the Right One In. I think it does a very good job of staying tried and true to the original, while also making it stand out on its own. I think it's a terrific film, one of the better horror remakes out there. Can't recommend this one enough. Let Me In. Definitely check it out.
Single, living under the same roof, raising a recently orphaned child. You're not sleeping together.
Go, go!
We will not be complicating anything with that.
Yeah.
We need to figure out a schedule.
That's my night off! Some chick says, oh, Missy, you can forget the condom, and I say no, and I still end up with the kid.
Check the services! I'm just kidding.
Okay.
They're all made of rubber. It's fine.
Oh, it's like someone got me down there.
What? Sweetie, you have poo on your face.
Life as we know it, rated PG-13, October 8th.
Sadly, no, we are not looking at the 2004 short-lived ABC show that was a really good show that was canceled not even a full season into its run. But did you ever see the show My So-Called Life? Because you definitely would like Life as We Know, the TV series, if you like My So-Called Life. Sadly, we're not talking about that, though, as I welcome you to another episode of Time About the Movies. We're taking a look at the 6 films released on October 8th, 2010, and, of course, the biggest new release of them all, Katherine Heigl and Josh Duhamel in Life as We Know It, as they star as two single adults who must settle their differences in order to take care of their goddaughter after her parents are killed in a car crash. On paper, this really doesn't seem like a bad idea in general, and yeah, to Katherine Heigl and Josh Duhamel's credit, they're perfectly fine in here. They're actually doing stuff in this movie that is unlike in their bad movies they had done before, especially Katherine Heigl, but sadly, the script is a disastrous mess that can't decide if it wants to be a coming-of-age drama or does it want to be is a comedy on the veins of something like a Judd Apatow movie, and just tries to do both and just fails miserably. I mean, you see it in the trailer with the lazy jokes. The lazy poop jokes, the lazy baby jokes, the fact that these two clearly have nothing in common, but surely they're going to get together at the end. It's just like, that's where the movie really does fall apart. And it really is a shame because the pieces were there for something really good, and it just can't deliver on that because it doesn't know if it wants to be something outside of these two's norm, or does it want to be something completely in their norm. And because of that, the film just falls apart altogether. I mean, it's a film that just takes whatever good potential it had to it and whatever good performances were holding it, and just completely loses you when you have a lackluster script that really has no idea which direction it wants to go. It wastes so much good talent in here. It's a bad movie. It's a really, really bad film, unfortunately. It's better than Killers. It's better than One in Rome, but then again, that's like saying, you know, the poop I took this morning was much better than the one I took a couple days ago when I literally couldn't get it out of my stomach. I mean, yeah, it's not that much of a difference. I mean, yeah, it's still something where it's like it's not gonna be any. It's better, but it's not better. But that's saying, like, you know, it's better than what I had to deal with before. And I think you get the metaphor I'm talking about here. Life as we know it. Like I said, stick with the ABC show of the same name. So let's try to turn the tide around with our next movie that we have here, and that's Diane Lane starring in Secretariat from Disney.
Ever seen?
He's got 5 inside him.
Which of you ladies owns Secretary?
His name is Secretariat.
All right, then. Let's show him what you're made of. What do you think?
He eats too much. He lays against the back of that starting gate like he's in a hammock in the Caribbean. You need to conjure up $6 million.
I'll find a way.
Horse racing is unforgiving for housewives.
It's like every other multi-million-dollar gamble we housewives make every day.
You're guaranteeing that this horse is going to win the Triple Crown. 3 races in 5 weeks. Hasn't been done in 25 years.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
You're that stubborn.
I'm that right. This is about life being ahead of you, and you run at it.
You're about to see something that you've never seen before. Secretariat, rated PG.
Ah, see, we're also getting our discount Samuel L. Jackson in this movie, because, yeah, that dude literally sounds like Samuel L. Jackson, but they probably wanted him. Samuel L. Jackson looked at it and said, "You're out your goddamn mind, I'm not starring in this." But they took the next best thing, and I don't know why, but when I watched this movie and I watched the trailers for this, it literally does feel like Diane Lane wants to seriously fuck this horse. I mean, that's like some weird horse fetish, because it's just like, you see the poster, and it's just like, it looks heartfelt and all that, but then you watch her in the movie, it's just like, she's getting way too attached to this horse, and it's just kind of like, I should be concerned about some bestiality here in a Disney film nonetheless, but that's just my sick, twisted mind right there. The movie itself actually isn't all that bad. This is, of course, the story of the thoroughbred racehorse Secretariat, who won the Triple Crown in 1973, and you have Diane Lane playing her owner, Penny Chenery, who takes over the docile Virginia stables of her ailing father, Christopher Chenery, despite her lack of horse racing knowledge. With the help of a veteran trainer played by John Malkovich, she navigates the male-dominated business, ultimately fostering the first Triple Crown winner in 25 years, widely considered the greatest racehorse of all time. And I got a good team behind it. Randall Rawls, the guy who wrote Braveheart, won the Oscar for writing a screenplay for that. As a director, he hasn't been that great overall, but this is probably his best overall film as a director. It's not a bad movie, but it's your typical Disney sports drama. I mean, it's a movie on the same levels as something like as Miracle and Glory Road, Invincible, The Rookie. And those have been good movies in general, but you could definitely tell the formula was starting to get a little bit old with this one here. And, yeah, it's fine. It's nothing amazing in general, but it's a film that really doesn't have a whole lot there to make it really stand out on its own or anything like that. Diane Lane, I think, is perfectly fine in here is playing the character here. John Malkovich was pretty good. Dylan Walsh, James Cromwell, Kevin Connolly, Scott Glenn. A script by Sheldon Turner, who also wrote a lot of Adam Sandler movies. This isn't a bad movie, but not a great film either. Plus, it really kind of stings the movie when you think of Secretariat, you don't think of the movie about his life. You think of this.
Who's under the door?
Yeah, that came because of this movie, and that became more memorable than the movie itself. I mean, that horse was there from there to the beginning to the end of the Craig Ferguson run on the Late Late Show. I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know about how much the longevity is. When people remember the dancing horse that just comes out whenever you hit a doorbell underneath the desk, and it's just like, who's that at the door? And then you start going around like doing this and all that. And hey, you can see why that worked a whole lot better than the movie itself. But like I said, the film isn't terrible, but when you compare that to what we know it more popularly for with the Craig Ferguson segment, the Craig Ferguson segment's going to win, no question about it. So that's Secretariat for you. So let's go ahead and move on to our next movie. It's Wes Craven's first 3D film, and that is My Soul to Take.
It's best not to think about your nightmares. It wasn't a nightmare.
Something dead was evil enough. Could it come back to life?
Come on, wherever you are.
Whatever you are, go back to hell where you came from.
My Soul to Take in 3D.
Wow, Nightmare on Elm Street much? Oh, and here's the kicker about this. This thing was actually shot in 2D, and then the post-production converted it to 3D. So you know what that means. It's the return of our good friend post-production 3D hell. Yeah, it's that type of a film. It's the first time that Wes Craven has produced, written, and directed a movie since Wes Craven's New Nightmare back in 1994. And it stars Max Thoreau as Adam Bug Helliman, who is one of 7 teenagers chosen to die following the anniversary of a serial killer's death. Denzel Whitaker, Raul Esparza, and Sharika Epps also star. The film title comes from a line in the prayer, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, which reads, If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Craven previously used the prayer as the mantra for Nancy Thompson in A Nightmare on Elm Street. So yeah, as I said, it's literally a retread of A Nightmare on Elm Street. And for this to be one of Wes Craven's last movies before his death in 2015, this is pathetic, man. This is literally a retread of A Nightmare on Elm Street for a new generation. It's like Wes Craven saw what they were doing with the remake earlier that year, and said, well, if you're going to remake my movie, I'm going to go ahead and make a new one just like it, with blackjack and hookers. And you know what? Forget the movie. And Futurama reference for you, but yeah, this thing is terrible, and the 3D is god-awful. This is one of those movies where you clearly see what they're going to do here. And by the way, here's another reason why you should not sit through this movie. This thing was shot back in 2008, so this has been sitting on a shelf for 2 years. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything you need to know about getting away from this movie in general. But hey, you know what? Wes Craven had a double stretch of films in 2005. He had a bad movie to start the year off with Cursed, and then he followed it up with a great movie in Red Eye. So does he turn the tide with his next film, Scream 4? Well, we'll get to that when we get to the start of next year. But yeah, you can avoid My Soul to Take like the plague. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. Zach Galifianakis tackling a much different role than we're used to seeing him in. It's kind of a funny story. That's literally the title.
Why are you in the ER? A lot going on in my mind. You should be a clean eye on bird dog and chicks. Are you a doctor?
Critics are raving about It's Kind of a Funny Story. Zach Galifianakis' performance is a revelation.
I'm sorry. I didn't have it going on.
It's exuberant, an instant classic. Zach Galifianakis will blow you away.
You're sweet to say that.
It's Kind of a Funny Story.
Ping pong?
Most people choose Octown on their meds to compete. When's that? Rated PG-13.
And of course, nobody went to go see it because it wasn't Zach Galifianakis being an obnoxious asshole. Just like what happened when Will Ferrell and Jack Black starred in movies outside of their norms and all that. And, Adam Sandler's another case as well. But in the story, you have Keir Gilchrist playing Craig, a high school junior in the gifted program, infatuated with his best friend's girl. When he realizes he's suicidal, he checks himself into the psychiatric ward of a hospital, thinking they'll do an observation to help him and send him home in time for school the next day. Once in, he finds out he must stay for a week. The juvenile ward is being renovated, so he's in with adults as well as a few youths. Bobby, a man with a young daughter, shows him around. Craig notices Noel about his age. He tries to keep his friends from finding out where he is. He draws, goes to therapy, sings, helps Bobby rehearse an interview. Is this the stuff of insight? And Bobby's played by Zach Galifianakis. Noelle's played by Emma Roberts. You have a cast that also includes Viola Davis, Lauren Graham, Jim Gaffigan, Zoe Kravitz, Adrian Martinez, Mary Birdsong, Thomas Mann, Morgan Murphy, Asif Manvi, and this is directed by the people who would give us Captain Marvel at the end of the decade. So these are competent directors overall. These are the same people that did Half Nelson and also Sugar. And again, it's a movie where you see Zach Galifianakis kind of playing the similar role that he's in the Hangover films, but not to the point where he's incredibly obnoxious and annoying, but he does just enough to make the film so much more enjoyable than it has any right to be. This is a film that does work because the performances in it are so strong. The performances are very good, and it does have that nice mix of comedy and dramatic elements that really do give it that edge and make it something that is so worth it in the end. It's not as good as something like A Stranger Than Fiction or A Punch Drunk Love, but it definitely shows a lighter side of Zach Galifianakis, and I think people would admire a whole lot more. And trust me, when we get to his next movie in November with Due Date, you're going to be wishing that you get this kind of a Zach Galifianakis performance again instead of what he does in that movie, because, oh, that one is a mess. So, not much more to say about that one. It's kind of a funny story. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. Robert De Niro, Edward Norton, and Mila Jovovich in Stone.
Out of here, you go through me.
Critics rave. Stone is a psychological tour de force. Do with him in person.
Stony's wife. Can I persuade you?
De Niro and Norton's performances are dead on.
See, both economy.
It's a game. Stone, in theaters October 15th.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last film Overture Films went out with, and it had its intentions, but it's not worth it in the end. Robert De Niro plays parole officer Jack Mabry, who only has a few weeks left before retirement and wishes to finish out the cases he had been assigned. One such case is that of Gerald Stone Creason, played by Edward Norton, who's a convicted arsonist who's up for parole. Jack is initially reluctant to indulge Stone in the coarse banter he wishes to pursue and feels little sympathy for the prisoner's pleas for an early release. Seeing little hope in convincing Jack by himself, Stone arranges for his wife Lucetta, played by Mila Jovovich, to seduce the officer, but motivates and intentions steadily blur amidst the passions and buried secrets of the corrupt players in this deadly game of deception. So, in a way, the film itself isn't terrible, but it's just nothing that memorable per se. I think Robert De Niro and Edward Norton really do carry the load of this film. They are playing roles that are very much against type. This isn't Edward Norton playing a similar role that he is in Primal Fear. He's playing a much different role in general here, and De Niro's doing the best he can with this. And even, I've criticized Mila Jovovich ever since the first Resident Evil movie, because I'm sorry, I don't think she's that good of an actress, and I'm just expecting not much in this movie, but to her credit, she's not bad in here. I mean, this is probably her overall best performance since The Fifth Element. I mean, this is a film where she's really given something to do, and it isn't just playing a stock, bland action heroine that's fucking the director here. But yeah, it's a film that does have times where it could be something really good, but it kind of falls into the heavy-handed, pretentious territory that a film like this could easily fall itself into here, and it just didn't work in general, and it's a shame because you could see the potential definitely there with this, but it just wasn't there in the final product itself. So yeah, not the best film for Overture Films to go out on. I mean, it's not bad, but it's definitely a film that could have been so much better than it actually was, but yeah, very mixed opinion on that one. So let's go ahead and move on to our last movie that we have here, the remake of I Spit on Your Grave.
What's a pretty little thing like you doing out here all alone?
Forgive me, Father, for I was sin. It's Dave, Meg.
Typical white people. They never learn. On both sides of this equation here. But this is, of course, a remake of the quintessential slasher classic of the 1970s, the one that every critic out there was ready to just pounce on because of what it was. And of course, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert were there at the forefront of that, saying it is as one of their dogs of the week, which was one of the things they had back when they were doing public access to Chicago. But in the story, you have the writer Jennifer Hills, who rents an isolated lakeside cabin in the woods of the peaceful Mockingbird Trail for 2 months to write a novel. 2 days later, she is brutally gang raped by 3 local bigots, the sheriff and a handyman, and Jennifer returns later to get revenge against the rapist. It literally says here on the IMDb, Jennifer returns later to revenge against the rapist. If you don't believe, yeah, look at that. There it is right there. So that's not me saying it. It's a Claudio Carvalho from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. But anyway, I've never seen either one of these. I mean, I've never really had that need to see I Spit on Your Grave, because really, it is what it is. I feel like it's a film where if you're gonna watch it, you're gonna watch it because you saw the original film. But even then, the original film knew that it was coming in a time that was primed with a lot of these exploitation horror movies, but trying to remake this for a new generation, I get it. They were trying to do what they did with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre still holds up because there's at least somewhat of an edge to it that can work in a modern setting, and that was something that Michael Bay did, and Marcus Nispel did when they made that first movie in 2003. But with this, even I can look at the trailer for this and see that this really does not look like it's the same movie as the original film. This just looks like a bland, stock horror remake, or not even a horror remake, a horror film that just nabs the title, I Spit on Your Grave. This plot could be used with any other horror movie, but because it's connected to I Spit on Your Grave, that's enough for people to go and see it. And sure enough, it becomes successful enough to find just the same cult following as the original film did, and even spawned a series of sequels that came after this. But I've never seen these movies, so I can't really say if anything I say is completely different from what the actual movie is. I sincerely doubt it, but I Spit on Your Grave. If you like these, you're probably going to enjoy it, but for newcomers like me, I've never really had any intentions of watching this, and probably will never watch this, so there you go. That's I Spit on Your Grave for you.
This isn't the best idea ever. When Time magazine called 3D the future of movies. 3, 2, 1. Without this is what they had in mind.
You're taking it to a whole other level. Yeah. Look pretty happy about it.
Me and the boys are about to do a little duck hunting. Whoa!
Santa did have a couple last night, so this ain't gonna feel too good.
Well, let's dive in. High five!
I mean, who can honestly ask for more? Welcome to another episode of Time About the Movies. Today we are taking a look at the 4 films released on October 15, 2010. And this is obviously the biggest new release of the weekend, Jackass 3D. And that's right, the Jackass crew are taking their stunts and more and putting it in the third dimension in 3D. You know I have to do that at this point, every 3D film. But this is notable for a couple of reasons. One, it's the last time you see Ryan Dunn with the Jackass crew before his death the following year, and Bam Margera is no longer with the crew after this point in the series, because you know he left in 2021. Even though he was in Jackass Forever, he was only in there for like a little bit. Like you would have never noticed him unless someone told you. That's Bam Margera right there. And of course, sadly, his life right now is not going in the best direction right now, unfortunately. But also, this was also the last time you saw Rip Taylor in the Jackass film, because he passed away in 2019. which is amazing because he. I mean, I didn't think he was that old when he was he wasn't. I didn't think he was at that age where I thought he was going to last much longer than that after this movie came out. But lo and behold, he lasted 9 more years after this movie came out. But you really need to know what the plot is. It's a bunch of drunk guys doing ridiculous and dangerous stunts and laughing at that person's expense, but in 3D. Okay, I'll stop. And yeah, that's the beauty of the Jackass movies, is that you really don't need any more details on how to make is on the plot in general. Just know it's the Jackass guys doing what they do best, and yeah, 3D surprisingly and shockingly was actually the benefit for this series, because those 3D cameras that they use for this come in handy when it comes to these stunts. They take these stunts to the next level and beyond, and that's what's amazing about this movie, is that this is some of the most creative and hilarious stunts I've ever seen in my life. And it's just not just the 3D stuff, but the stuff, the stuff at the beginning. It's bookended by 2 great bits. The high five scene, which you see in the trailer there, the guys coming into the Jackass studios, and Weeman's just like, hey man, high five, and then this giant hand hits the screen, and hits them, and that's great. The Poo Cocktail Supreme, part of their, this came out around the time the 10th anniversary of Jackass was, and that was one of the original stunts they did. And this time it's Steve-O doing it instead of Johnny Knoxville. Even though Britney Spears, believe it or not, was actually going to do that, but she decided not to do that. But yeah, it's a great celebration of Jackass in general. Not just a great celebration of Jackass, but a great celebration of MTV. This movie. You don't think about it when you look at the trailer for this, but this movie is a celebration of what made MTV so special back in the day. I mean, you have the movie open up with Beavis and Butthead telling you about 3D glasses. It doesn't make any sense to the plot. Beavis and Butthead are not in the rest of the movie, and yet it just feels right. It just felt like MTV was back to celebrating what MTV was all about before they became known for such great stuff as The Hills and Jersey Shore. And good Lord, MTV, what the hell happened to you? But like I said, it's a great retrospective of the last 10 years. I mean, the film's elaborate opening has a number of great homages to the past, like, Steve-O jumping up and hitting a ceiling fan, just like even in the first Jackass movie. There's references all across the movie, and even the movie ends with this nice tribute of all the gang. It's Weezer's memories playing in the background. Like, you gotta remember, they really thought that this was going to be the end of the road for them, but nobody really knew the series was going to continue long after this movie came out, with another movie coming out 12 years later, and then, of course, before that, Johnny Knoxville did Bad Grandpa, which is the weakest of the Jackass movies, but it still has enough moments in there to appreciate it for what it was. But Jackass 3D just works because they take what made the original show so special. It's a celebration of the last 10 years. It's a celebration of what MTV used to be. And it shows Jackass taking their talents to the next level in 3D. 3D, surprisingly, made this much more than it had any right to be. It was such a good, fun ride. You can't help but love it. If you love the other movies, you're going to love the hell out of this one. No question about it. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the movies that had the balls to go up against Jackass 3D. And first one is an ensemble, an action comedy ensemble, and that is Red.
We're going to break into the CIA and find out who's trying to kill us.
We're getting the band back together.
I am excited.
Bruce Willis, Morgan Freeman, John Malkovich, Mary Louise Parker, and Helen Mirren.
I remember the CIA being tough.
Yeah, me too.
Red, directed by Robert Schwenkamp, rated PG-13.
The last of the big Men on a Mission movie that came out in 2010. This is based off of a comic miniseries by DC, written by Warren Ellis and Curly Hammer, and follows Bruce Willis as Frank, who is retired, bored and lonely of living off the government pension in a nondescript suburb in an equally nondescript house. The only joy in Frank's life are his calls to the government pension processing center when he gets to talk to the caseworker, played by Mary Louise Parker of Weeds fame. Sarah is as bored as lonely as Frank, and marks her conversations with the unknown Frank and her spy novels as the only thing fun in her life. When something in Frank's past forces Frank back into his line of work and puts an unwitting Sarah in the middle of the intrigue, Frank and Sarah begin a journey into Frank's past and the people that he used to work for. Like Frank, they are all red. Retired, extremely dangerous. Now that sounds like the plot of a badass action film, and for the most part, it delivers on its plot, and it almost works to become a really good movie. But the plot just goes all over the place, and it's so confusing that, once again, you have no idea who the villain of the film is towards the end. Like, you have no idea who the bad guy of the movie is. Like, I mean, that's this film's two biggest flaws. One, the script is just terrible. It's a script written by the guys who will later give us the asset that is Battleship. They have no idea what kind of a story they wanted to tell. Do they want to make a story about these former CIA agents, or do they want to make a straightforward, predictable action film? And the film doesn't give us any real indication on what the motif of this film is supposed to be. And on top of that, again, this is one of those movies where there's so many villains put into this film, you have no idea who the main bad guy is. I mean, it's not that damn difficult. Just pick somebody and move the fuck on. But other than that, though, I guess the movie is good, I guess. I mean, the cast is more than enough to save the film in general. You got Helen Mirren, John Malkovich, Morgan Freeman, Richard Dreyfuss, Julian McMahon, rest in peace, Dr. Doom, passed away earlier this week, but the action scenes are pretty good, the comedy does work for the most part, and it is a pretty enjoyable movie. I mean, there really isn't anything that memorable about it per se. John Malkovich, I think, overall, is the best thing about the movie, because unlike what he played in another DC movie from earlier in the year, Jonah Hex, he's fucking hilarious playing the psychotic nutcase. It's one of his best performances, if not his best performance ever. And that's saying a lot, because John Malkovich has had a ton of great works in his career, but other than that, Red is a film that delivers on its promise from the trailers, boasting some pretty good action and comedy with a good cast to lead it. But other than that, there's really nothing all that memorable about it per se. I'm glad I saw it, but it's not one I never want to watch again per se. Which means that they have to make a sequel off of it because it was a big success, so yeah, because clearly that's going to turn out very well. But anyway, that's the big wider releases. Now let's take a look at the limited releases this weekend, including Clint Eastwood's latest film, and that is Hereafter.
The job I had before, I wanted to as a psychic. Clint Eastwood's new film, Hereafter, is something to savor. It's amazing, bold, provocative, and profound. Matt Damon's marvelous, an emotion picture experience that engages both your heart and mind. If you're worried about being on your own, don't be. You're not. Hereafter, rated PG-13.
So this is a film where you have three parallel stories about three people being affected by death in similar ways. All three have issues of communicating with the dead. One of them, you have Matt Damon playing an American factory worker who is able to communicate with the dead and who's worked professionally as a clairvoyant, but no longer wants to communicate with the dead. Cécile de France, from Around the World in 80 Days, the 2004 film, plays a French television journalist who survives a near-death experience during the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. And British twins Marcus and Jason, played by Frankie and George McLaren. Bryce Dallas Howard, Lindsay Marshall, Jay Moore, and Thierry Neuvik also have supporting roles in the film. The idea of the film overall is impressive enough, and the performances do well, plus that tsunami scene overall is really, really good. Unfortunately, it's one scene, and like I said, the visuals are not great, but what do I always say on here? Visuals don't always make the movie. You gotta give me more than just good visuals. And sadly, the rest of the movie is kind of a bore. It's mostly because of the story itself. You never really get any satisfaction out of anything out of this, and you really end up finding yourself very disappointed with the overall end result of it. It just doesn't come together well as a film in general. And for Clint Eastwood, who was having a couple of really good movies around this time, to have this one coming up after stuff like Invictus and Gran Torino, and of course Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. This is definitely not one of his better movies in general. And it's sad to say, because this was around the time where he was kind of on that little bit of a wall with this, and then Trouble with the Curve, and then he'd slowly make a comeback with American Sniper just a couple of years later. But this one, not so much. This one's not that great of a film. Avoid Hereafter like the plague, unfortunately. But check that tsunami scene out online. I mean, I would recommend that more than I would say go out and find the movie in general. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here, which is Conviction.
Murder in the first degree.
Betty Ann Waters believed enough in her brother's innocence
to find a way to get him out.
To go back and finish high school.
So proud of you.
Get through college.
Start again, Miss Waters.
And graduate from law school.
Mom! My baby sister basketball!
Now, experience one woman's extraordinary 18-year journey to set her brother free. Conviction.
inspiring true story. Rated R.
You really want another one of these that badly, do you, Hilary Swank? Because this is the second time in the last year that we've looked at 2 Oscar bait movies, and and Amelia was terrible. This one is better, but yeah, this one, you're not getting your hands on this one. Sad to say. You got 2 already, so just be happy with that, I guess. But in this movie, Hilary Swank plays Betty Ann Waters, who's a high school dropout who spends nearly 2 decades working as a single mother while putting herself through law school, tirelessly trying to beat the system and overturn her brother's unjust murder conviction, her brother being played by Sam Rockwell. And there's also a cast that also includes, if I can get the names up here, Minnie Driver, Melissa Leo, Peter Gallagher, Juliette Lewis. Written uncredited writing by Richard LaGravenese, who's worked with Hilary Swank on a couple of movies before this, P.S. I Love You and Freedom Riders. And this is directed by Tony Goldwyn, coming off of the last thing he directed, which was the infamous The Last Kiss. I guess this one's not bad, and certainly a much better film, but it's still not. Excuse me. I can't even get the words out right now, but it's not a bad movie. It's just not a great movie in general. It is a film that feels very much like a give me an Oscar type of movie for Hilary Swank and Sam Rockwell. And both of them would get, and Sam Rockwell would get his Oscar later on in the decade for Birdman. Did he get it for Birdman, or did he get it for 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri? Okay, he got it for 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. Sorry, I thought he got one for Birdman. I couldn't. Let me see. No, I'm thinking of Edward Norton. I'm thinking of Edward Norton as for Birdman, but he did win an Oscar later in the decade for 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. And that was a much better performance than anything in this film here. The film itself, like I said, it's not a terrible movie. It's just a bland, generic courtroom drama and a bland, uplifting a story about an underdog who spends the next 20 years trying to get to this point in her point, and it's just like, you know, you gotta have something more than that than just a schlocky story that we've seen done to death so many times before. It just doesn't work here, unfortunately. And like I said, it's a better directorial effort for Tony Goldwyn after The Last Kiss, but even then, it's not that great of a movie in general. Yeah, a mixed opinion. Not a great film, not a bad film. Just, it is what it is. It's better than The Last Kiss, but that ain't saying a whole lot. So that's Conviction for you. So, as you can see, we're just jumping right on into it. And welcome to Time About the Movies. Today we're taking a look at the one big new release for October 22nd, 2010. And that is, of course, Paranormal Activity 2. Which is, of course, the sequel to the last year's breakout hit, Paranormal Activity. And as the trailer said right there, in 2009 you demanded it, and now in 2010... you're going to get it anyway, because the first film was such a big success. Even though there is a demanded to see it first thing on here, which I don't know what that meant. Does that mean that maybe they had some like early screenings going for it? But this movie is essentially a prequel to the events of Paranormal Activity, which actually begins 2 months before the events of the original film, and it's set over a longer period of time and eventually concludes after the first film's ending. As this time around, we're following Katie's sister, Christy, who starts suspecting that a supernatural entity is tormenting them. And as we find out at the end of the movie, that turns out to be Katie herself, because now she, remember from the first movie, she's possessed now by the demon in that movie, and the movie literally ends with her taking the baby with her at the end of that movie. Sorry for spoilers, but that's exactly what happened. Yeah, this is This is a film that was very interesting because, as I've been building up here for the last couple of years now, with the Saw movies have essentially been the films that were the Halloween staples. Like, every Halloween it had to be a new Saw movie coming out, and it was going to be a big success regardless of what you thought or not. But because nobody was really coming in there and trying to combat with Saw because it was just such a powerful franchise in general. But by 2009, there was a lot of vulnerability, and Paranormal Activity was the first movie to come in and really take away that muster from Saw. And it was this movie in particular that really made Paranormal Activity the next big Halloween must-see destination film for a spooky thrill ride. Because Saw comes out the next week, and this Saw 3D isn't going to do as well as Paranormal Activity 2 did. Paranormal Activity basically chopped off Jigsaw and took over the Halloween staple lineup from that point going forward. And interesting enough, this film was directed by Todd Williams, whose last movie he directed was The Door in the Floor, a completely different movie, which is a straight-up drama with Jeff Bridges and Kim Basinger. So yeah, this is definitely a very interesting path to go down, especially after that movie. But yeah, Paranormal Activity 2, there is a bigger budget involved because, of course, the first one was a very small-budgeted film, and now that Paramount's given them more money to do whatever they want, but then again, it's also Jason Blum, and Jason Blum pretty much can do whatever he wants to with a smaller budget, and this was back in a time when he can make that work, and sure enough, he did a pretty good job of handling this. This actually turned out to be a much better movie, expanding the storyline from the last film, and giving us a good indication of how this connects to the original film, because as I said, it's essentially a prequel, which ends up being which at the end ends up being something that happens at the end of the first movie. I mean, they do a good job of bookending both movies together. So if this movie didn't end up doing as well as it would eventually do, you could probably wrap this up in just 2 movies. But of course, like I said, this is a movie where it's basically a success all the way through, and of course there's going to be another one later. And yeah, this does a very good job of upping the ante. The tension is very good in here. The scare factors are pretty good here too. There are scares in here that are legitimately good. Suspenseful moments that are legitimately good. They do a very good job of doing so much with so little with the found footage element, and they make it work to a T. It is a very good film overall. It's an impressively put together film. It's a really intense film. It's just a terrific movie, man. It's a really solid sequel. One of the few horror sequels to actually outdo the original film in terms of upping the ante. But then again, it is kind of like what happened with Saw. Saw was a good movie overall, but then Saw 2 upped the ante in terms of what they could do in general, and it leads into a pretty solid series in general for the first couple of films. Sort of like what happens with Paranormal Activity. I think this one does a very good job upping the ante from the first movie, and it does it well to a T. It's one I highly recommend checking out. It's definitely shows that this series did have some good movies going into it, and definitely wasn't just a one-trick pony with the first film. They knew what they were doing up to the ante, at least for the first couple of films, especially with the next movie, Paranormal Activity 3, which is arguably the best one of the series. And yeah, definitely one worth checking out. Paranormal Activity 2, can't recommend it enough.
This Halloween, the game has a new design. The traps come alive. Saw 3D, all of my work has been leading to this.
Theaters October 29th.
And welcome to Time About the Movies. Today we're taking a look at the 3 films of October 29th, 2010. And of course the biggest new release of the weekend is Saw 3D. And marks the end of an era for Saw, because it's the last film in the series at the time. And essentially it was replaced by Paranormal Activity as the must-see Halloween film franchise. But they tried to get back in there. But you have a story that follows an author, played by Sean Patrick Flannery, who, after falsely claiming to be a survivor of one of the games perpetrated by the Jigsaw Killer in order to become a local celebrity, he finds himself part of a real game where he must save his wife. Meanwhile, John Kramer's ex-wife, Jill Tuck, informs Internal Affairs that rogue detective Mark Hoffman, Costas Mandalore, is the man responsible for the recent Jigsaw games. It also includes Carrie Elways from the first movie back again. So it was seen at the time as the last installment of the series in general, especially considering that the last 2 movies had not been the big box office successes, and Paramount saw that opportunity and had a hit with Paranormal Activity the year before and decided to do it with Paranormal Activity 2, and needless to say, they took over, and Saw was just kind of left in the dust at this point. And, to its credit, it's fine, I guess. I mean, the traps overall, it is impressive to now see the traps coming into the real world now, that everybody can see this now. And I think that's kind of a cool thing, but unfortunately they don't really do anything with it per se. It just kind of is just, there's that one scene in the trailer where you see the guy getting killed by the one thing, by the machine while everyone's watching around him. But other than that, that's about it. There really is nothing else to this movie that really makes it work in general, and it's not for the lack of trying. I mean, they are trying to do stuff with this, and the 3D does look pretty cool for the most part, but it was just basically time for the series to go, because, like I said before, with every passing movie, it was just getting more and more about what unique kills can they come up with here, and sometimes the kills can be unique here, but it almost becomes self-parody at this point. It really does feel like they literally have nothing else to work with at this point, and we're just literally grasping for straws at what they could do here. I mean, that's why I think they took a long time to get another movie out there, because they said, well, let's wait a couple of years. Let's let the Paranormal Activity people have their fun, and then we'll come back and do the exact same thing we were doing before, and people will love it. And it didn't really work out. The next 3 films that came out weren't big box office hits. But the last 2 Saw movies, Saw 3D, Saw X, and also the one before that, Spiral, they weren't actually bad movies. They were actually kind of good. I was actually kind of impressed with Spiral in general, the Chris Rock one. But other than that, though, yeah, it was time for the series to go out, and it kind of goes out on a sour note, and it really isn't as strong as it could have been. The 3D can look pretty cool, and it is shot in 3D, so it isn't like one of those post-production 3D hell things here, like with Piranha 3D and also My Soul to Take, but it works for what it's trying to accomplish. It works if you want to go in there and see this come into the real world, but other than that, though, there's no real reason to watch this film after the first time out. It kind of comes and goes, and it's just kind of like, yeah, we're pretty much done with this already, so, yeah. Not much more to say about this one here. Mixed opinion, but mostly towards can't really say if it's negative or positive, just kind of a mixed opinion on Saw 3D. So with that said, let's go ahead and get to some independent releases, and let's get to the 3rd installment of the Millennium Trilogy, the conclusion of the series that have been taking place throughout the course of the year. And that is The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest.
This year, the unmissable final chapter of the most talked about cinematic event is finally here. Based on the international bestseller by Steve Lasso, the full-blown literary and movie phenomenon of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo will be concluded.
So in the conclusion of the Millennium Trilogy, Lisbeth Salander, played by Noomi Rapace, is under close supervision in a hospital and is set to face trial for attempted murder on her eventful release. With help from journalist Mikkel Blomqvist, once again played by Michael Nyqvist, and its researchers at Millennium Magazine, she must prove her innocence. In doing this, she plays against powerful enemies and her own past. Now, this was shot around the same time that the last film, The Girl Who Played with Fire, was shot, and that's why they have the same director, Daniel Alfredson, who of course will later go on to direct. I keep thinking he's the director that did Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, but that's Tomas Alfredson. But it's not the same person. But this is the same director who did the last movie. And the last movie was good, but not great. This one's definitely a little bit of an improvement, but it still doesn't top the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I mean, as a standalone movie, it's good. It's pretty good. But if you watch all three of them together like I did the first time around, you really do come around to seeing the true enjoyment of all three of these movies, watching them all at the same time, because they do play a very good part watching them all together at once after you've read the books, which I read all three of the books when these were coming out, so I had the opportunity to watch these movies in particular and get acquainted as I was reading the books that they were going along, and I think that helps playing out with this movie. If you're watching them one at a time, I think it really does hurt the ebb and flow of the movie in general if you're watching them just once at a time. And I think watching all three of them does work out in its favor. Overall, when you watch all three of them together, it makes for a really good epic movie in general. It's a good movie, definitely better than the last one, but not quite as good as the first Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie. And this won't be the last time we'll see Elizabeth and Michael, because the next year David Fincher will give us his version of his American version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo with Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and we'll take a look at that one next year for sure. And that definitely is another great movie in the series. But this one's a good movie, not a great film, but again, it's all about watching them together and watching them as you're reading the books all along. I think that's the most beneficial thing that happens with that movie in particular, if you do it that way. At least to me, that's what I think it helps out. So, the series overall is great. Just watch them all in one continuous loop, and I think you get a great film in the process out of it, if you watch all three of them together. So, that's the Go to Kick the Hornet's Nest. Now, let's take a look at our last one that we have here, and that is Gareth Edwards' Monsters. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the reason why Gareth Edwards became the director of Godzilla and eventually Jurassic World Rebirth. This was his directorial debut, and it's a pretty decent directorial debut if you take a look at it. It takes place after a NASA probe crashed in Mexico, as it says in the trailer, 6 years prior to this, which leads to the sudden appearance of giant tentacled monsters, and it follows a man played by Scoot McNairy, an American photojournalist tackled with escorting his employee's daughter, Whitney Abel, back to the United States by crossing through Mexico's infected zone where the creatures reside. And this is a very low-budget monster movie. This thing was made only for $500,000, and it helps that Gareth Edwards was the cinematographer, the production designer, and the visual effects artist on this. And they did a pretty good job of keeping the budget on this very restrained, but it doesn't quite have that same spark as something like a District 9, like the year before, which is clearly what this movie was trying to be like. And District 9 worked because it took chances with a lot of the budget that it had to work with. And this movie does take chances too, maybe not as many as you would have expected. I think this is a movie that saw what happened with District 9 and thought, well, we could do the same thing with that. And it doesn't quite get there, but it's not a bad movie by any means necessary. I think it is a very solid film for what this guy was able to do. The actors overall are really good. Scoot McNairy has gone on to have a nice little acting career in general. Whitney Abel, I don't think has done a whole lot since this. She might have done a couple of things in general, but it's basically the two of them in this movie. And they're doing a pretty good job with this overall. They're doing a pretty good job of handling this in general. They were married at the time of this movie coming out, and then they got divorced by the end of the decade, I'm seeing here. But it's an interesting film just to see it's just the two of them and all these different creatures. And they did a pretty good job on the visual aspect of it. Again, not quite as good as something like a District 9, but still good enough to recommend. I think it's definitely a film that you get to see a lot of why studios looked at this and said, we gotta have this guy direct blockbusters, and look at what he's done since then. Godzilla, Rogue One, The Creator, Jurassic World Rebirth. Most of them have been pretty good except for Jurassic World Rebirth, but hey, it's a good start to show what this guy can do as a director as a whole. Definitely one we're checking out. I highly recommend it. Monsters.